So welcome back. Now, the last time we had a talk about Visual Studio and development, we ended up talking about the detailed options in the output window. But and the reason I was happy about that was I was able to find the setting that actually allows us to figure out the amount of detail we wanted. But today, what I wanted to do is switch gears and start talking about types for C++. So let me go ahead and get set up here, and then we can get started. Oh yeah, all right. Make a new one. Now, with types in any programming language, the main idea is you build something complicated out of simple pieces. And that's generally how all of software development works when you're thinking about how to build solutions. Getting a little bit sloppy with my typing. Just trying to hurry up and get our template in place. Okay, so thinking about types and thinking about software development in general, there's always the notion of some idea that you're trying to get across in code. So if you think about Google, right, the search engine that we all know, Google has the ability to do searches. So you give it a search, and then it gives you results. And it doesn't just give you one result, it gives you a lot of results. So that's just one model. So the model here is I want to find out things from Google. I put in a search, I get results. If you think about Instagram, you have the same kind of setup where you've got pictures, one or more pictures with comments associated with them, and your feed, I guess, because it's kind of like Twitter. And even for something like Twitter, you've got your feed, which has your tweets. And let me comment this out so the compiler stops fighting with me. But the main idea here is that everything that you can think of as it relates to building solutions is going to be based on what you know about the world around you. And types are the fundamental building block that you would use to be able to make that happen. Now, in C++, we've got a few basic types. And let me back up a bit and say there are two different kinds of types. You have your fundamental types, which are built in, and you've got your user-defined types, which are not built in. They're created by you or me. And the fundamental types are what we're going to talk about for the next few lectures, because if you have a good understanding of what's available to you just starting out, then it allows you to experiment. And when you're trying to build things for companies, for yourself, for startups, you think about what's available to you in the language that you're using. So the fundamental types here are the int, the double, the char, and let's see. So starting from these smaller types, you end up with single valued items. And you've also heard this be described as variables. So your integer is what you think of when you think of like actual numbers, not real numbers. I won't get into any mathematical stuff yet. So thinking about an int, you'd think about 10, 20, 100, 200, 18. These numbers don't have a decimal. But when you think about doubles, doubles do have decimals. So let's see. Anything that you can think of that has a decimal place, that's your double. And your char is what you would think. So char is just short for character. So we've got A, and we've also got big A, and you've got symbols, etc. Now, from these fundamental types, you can do quite a bit, but you can't do very much. So when we think about what we did with the hello world, we can do the same thing with types. So if I wanted to say like, let's see, birth month, let's say. So birth month, birthday, so we say like the 10th, birth year, 2019. Now we can take these items and just like we did a hello world, we can do a simple set of prints where we're going to print our birth month, birthday, and birth year. Nothing fancy, just trying to get familiar with the fundamental types that we have at our disposal. So birthday, birth year. Now we compile this, and all it's going to do. Well, I'll let you think about it for a second while I build it, and I will set the breakpoint. All right, so now when we run the program with our debugging turned on, we're going to write to the console, and we wrote to the console exactly what we expected. So the birth month, the birthday, the birth year. Okay, I mean that's not that hard, but then you think, okay, so what? Right? What's the big deal? Just because I yeah, you printed what you put here, but it's also important to understand that when you use a fundamental type, the fundamental type has expected values that the compiler is going to get upset with you about if you don't use it the way that it was intended to be used. So if I wanted to actually use a first name, let me see. So if I said char array, employee name, and maybe we got into this before, but if I said employee name is equal to 20, so the compiler's upset because it's expecting. First of all, this is saying, let's look at this error. It's saying it's expecting a collection of things. So let me remove this for now and just make the case for what I was saying before. Now, character employee name 20. So this is an integer, but it's allowing for what's known as a cast or a conversion. So it's going to give you something that you might not be expecting, because it's going to take this integer and turn the integer into a character so that it can present it in the variable box that you selected. So, I mean, that's just another way of thinking about, when I say variable, I mean I'm using a fundamental type, and I've given a name to that fundamental type, and I've given a value to that fundamental type that has this name. But in the case of a character type being provided with an integer instead of a character, like we talked about up above, you end up getting something that you might not expect. So if we print out the employee name, you might think that it'll show you 20, but it's not going to do that. And that's because it's going to do a silent conversion of this integer into the character that this number represents. So let's do a build, and then we'll see what actually comes out when you print to the screen. All right, so now that we're printing to the screen, take a couple seconds and see if you can figure out, just looking through what I have right here, what do you think it's going to do? So hold that thought, and now we'll see what it's going to do. All right, so notice we've got our integers printed, but then when we tried to print our character, we got this weird looking symbol. Now, actually, and that's because the character that we wanted that has a value of 20 is not it's not what we were expecting. So for the next session, lesson, lecture, whatever you want to call it, in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a bit about why why employee name printed out something that doesn't look anything like a character. And once we get to that piece, hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense, because the truth of it is C++ is very close to it's very close to the machine. And what that means is there are a lot of things about the language that are closely tied to the way that things are stored in memory, and that has a lot to do with the way that values are represented when you print them out or when you use them in functions. So, okay, that's it for this one. And for the next one, we will continue this train of thought and continue to talk about the types that are available to you. And, if we're able to move quickly enough along, then we'll get to where we start to do our own user-defined types, and also talk about collections of these fundamental types, because I hinted at it, but I didn't really describe it. So if you would, please subscribe, or click the like button, or even leave comments, so that I can continue to improve my my delivery and the way that these lectures are structured. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.